Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me. Today, we continue with the fourth season of the Match Guide, where we'll be looking beyond the ropes of Tony Khan's ring to the matches, wrestlers, promotions, and movements that influenced All Elite Wrestling. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe or rate it on your podcast app of choice. Support the Social Suplex Podcast Network financially through Red Circle, and make sure you check out all of the other great shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where we cover all aspects of the world of pro wrestling. We've got One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Tunnel Talk, the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, Wrestle Art with Chris Things, Imp's AEW Adventure, and Joshying Around. And you can subscribe to our newsletter, the Social Suplex newsletter, at socialsuplex.com/newsletter. Become part of our community by joining our Discord, where you can chat with the hosts of all our podcasts, as well as other wrestling fans from all around the world. Links for all of these things are in the podcast description. My guest for today is a rapper, producer, podcaster, and he is no stranger to this channel, one of the hosts of One Nation Radio and the creator of Rich Latta Pro Wrestling on YouTube. It's Rich Latta. And today we're discussing Killshot versus Dante Fox, the Hell of War match from Lucha Underground Ultima Lucha Tres Part 1. And we also have some direct comments from Killshot, a.k.a. Swerve Strickland himself, reflecting on the match. Rich, welcome to the show, mate. It's good to have you.
Oh, man, glad to be back, man. And it took a little bit for us to kind of figure out a match that kind of made sense, that I felt like I think I might be able to shed some light on, like, you know, and do a good job with. But when you presented this one, I was like, that's it immediately.
Yep. Yeah, it's almost like a freedom is too much thing, where you're like, hey, you can talk about any wrestling match from the whole history of wrestling. What do you want to talk about?
Right. I was like, man, I don't know, man. It's
too much.
Yeah.
But I think we've landed on the perfect one for us. It's a match that I knew existed and I'd seen highlights for, and it was an absolute joy to dig into. And I hope the listeners who are listening in feel the same. If you've never seen this match, great one to check out, and this will be hopefully whet your appetite for it.
Yeah, it's a match that made its way. Like, I wouldn't call either of us regular Lucha Underground watchers at the time, but this match made it out of containment, I would say, into what I was kind of watching at the time. I saw this match, like not long after it happened, and there was another kind of thing like that. I was getting shown. I remember I think it was working at my old job at the time, and a guy named Andrew that I work with, he came in super excited about Lucha Underground. And I was like, what is this? And then he showed me Prince Puma, and he showed me Ray Phoenix, and I was like, what is going on here? I must know more. So I would seek out the Prince Puma stuff, and then eventually, I landed on this one, and I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, we're like this is crazy. Who are
Yep.
these guys?"
Yep. Yeah, this is like a bolt from the blue, this match. It absolutely stands out even amongst all of the wrestling I've watched, and I've watched some vile stuff over the years, I can tell you that. Before we get into the actual match itself though, Rich, I'd want to give you a chance. You've been a really busy man of late. You've got a number of plates spinning. I've got to say I've been very excited to see the growth in and the development of this YouTube channel that you launched a few months ago.
Thank you, man. It was just kind of a idea I kind of ran with. I was getting the seeds dropped for it by none other than Swerve Strickland, as well as my boy DJ MP. They were just like saying, "Hey, man, you should like you can be as big as anybody if you really like put your mind to it." And I was like, I always just thought I can host One Nation Radio and have fun doing it forever and everything like that. But I'm like, if I ever wanted to get bigger, I'm going to need to work harder. And I just kind of looked at it like that. Like, I'm going to expand basically the presence of, being able to, just work very hard. And the way YouTube is now, it's an easy way to kind of blend both audiences, and hopefully some people discover me through ROPW, and then it leads them to Social Suplex, and then that's already kind of paid off a little bit, I think, in the numbers, which is really exciting. Just a small test of concept within a month or so, and it's just about showing up every day and staying consistent, and I'm having a blast doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting how this YouTube game works. Like, people who listen to this podcast might not know, who listen to the full podcast on their podcast app. I've been experimenting, putting out things like shorts and clips and stuff this season. And it's interesting to see, like, you get people in the comments who, you wouldn't expect to show up. So it's cool to see, how it gets out there, and particularly for you, like, seeing your voice out there, and you definitely bring a different perspective to what most of the wrestling influencers do. You're my friend, so of course I'm going to big you up. But I think
appreciate it, man.
I think it's like it's a more well-rounded take on things. Someone who's watched a lot more wrestling than what some of the other influencers who've sort of blown up watch, and someone who thinks about it, I think, at a much deeper level than what a lot of them do. And so yeah, I'm been avidly watching all the content you've been putting out, and yeah, it's cool to see what you've been up to.
I appreciate it, Sam. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
not a long time ago in the Lords of Pain forums, like, there was, I think it was the summer of 2017, just back and forth every day. It was always a pleasure trading, columns essentially with you, like knowing you were going to have one, I was going to have one out, and then it was 3 times a week. It was something that it taught me a lot kind of about myself too. So.
Well, I feel like, funnily enough, I remember you explaining, because your columns back then were called Latta's Lariat. And your idea was that, like, it was, a quick, hard hitting, but impactful. And I feel like that's almost the spirit you've brought to your videos you're putting out there. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, these are like the natural extension of the Latta's Lariat columns from back in the day.
Chad said the same thing.
Yeah. There you go. Yep. Well, look, great minds. What can I say?
That's
Let's get into this match though, because as I said, like, we're sort of skirted around the edges of it, but it's one that we can definitely dive into. And of course, it took place in Lucha Underground, which was a promotion that sort of sprung up in the 2010s and was on like popular TV. It wasn't massively widespread, but it involved a lot of younger wrestlers, a lot of new names that they sort of brought through, which was something very admirable, and they took from the indie scene, and they did a number of unique things. And I think we're going to be able to spotlight some of them as we talk about this match and talk about the legacy of it as well afterwards. But let's talk about the actual characters that were in this match. We've got, we know him now as Swerve Strickland, but back then when he debuted in Lucha Underground, he was known as Killshot. And he was a character that first showed up in season 1 of Lucha Underground. So he was, one of the sort of almost foundational players that was involved in the company. But he was given like a proper backstory and more of a feature role in season 2. It was revealed there that he was a former Marine. He had a bit of a mysterious and dark past. And he wore the dog tags of his fallen brothers around his neck. So, he was sort of taking his brotherhood with him through these matches and taking his brothers that, had been left behind through, potentially to glory in Lucha Underground, but always with him as he went in. And they actually formed part of one of his biggest programs that he had, which climaxed in early in season 3, when Marty Martinez, who was one of the sort of villains of Lucha Underground, he actually stole the dog tags off Killshot. And after like a real bloody hardcore match, Killshot regained those dog tags. But shortly after that, a new figure emerged, Dante Fox, who we now know, or was previously known before he appeared on Lucha Underground as AR Fox. But Dante Fox appeared. Just his appearance sort of really shakes up Killshot. And Fox goes on to reveal that he was in the same military unit as Killshot back in the day. And that while they were in battle in Fallujah, Killshot left Fox for dead, which left Fox to be captured, become a prisoner of war, and get tortured. And Fox was not happy about that. He wanted revenge for that. He wanted to seek an apology, seek recompense from Killshot. And they would get involved in, a number of matches together. They had like this great sprint that was like a bit of a brawl. And then they were involved in a 4-way together, and there was some more multi-man matches. And every time they met physically, things were getting more and more aggressive. And they would also air a number of cinematic confrontations between the two of them, which was something that was very unique to Lucha Underground. It wouldn't have the sort of promo back and forth that we're used to in American pro wrestling. It would be, these more cinematic shots that they would do. And each of them would reveal their sides of the story. You'd have Fox, showing a lot of aggression towards Killshot for what he did and what Killshot's actions in leaving him behind cost him. And then Killshot, showing some guilt and feeling guilty about it, but also being defensive because he felt like he'd done everything he could to help. And it was just a hopeless situation and he just had to get out. And that's sort of what was leading up to this match, this Hell of War match that they created, this escalating aggression and these two sides. And Rich, I really loved when I was looking back at these cinematic back and forth that they did, that both wrestlers have got like a strong point and like a sympathetic point to them. There's not an overt good or bad guy, even if one of them is, a little bit more aggressive than the other one, and one is potentially a little bit more defensive. They've both got very strong points in terms of what their characters have gone through and what's led them to this point.
Yeah, and it's like by the time you get in the ring, like even if you didn't have all that backstory with it, you can just see these guys have clearly been driven to this point, and they kind of unleash this level of violence that I don't think really aired just regularly on TV. And like in America, you mentioned like the cable small, like it was on the El Rey network, and this was kind of a prestige cable channel. Like this wouldn't be in your regular package. Like you had to have like, the expensive one, and you would get like El Rey network. And I think even the way they shot these matches, like the temple, you didn't mention, like the temple added to this match and the swinging camera in it, and it just visually, it feels cinematic in itself, like the match, but like it's not, it's not an actual cinematic match, but it feels like a movie in a sense.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the temple specifically, because I've got some old friends who I actually had on the podcast a number of years ago, back in the very first iteration of this podcast, the guys from Watch Great Wrestling. And two of them attended some of the early season 1 tapings. And it's actually it was taped there. One of them is in the TV industry, and it's taped in a studio that he had done other work in, which was interesting that he's,
Amazing.
kind of turning back up there as a fan. But it was very much the way they said it was treated like a sitcom TV taping, like the tickets were free. This is season 1, so it got different towards the end of it. But he says like the tickets were free. They shot multiple episodes at the same time. Some of the matches were very extensively edited. And they like actually had catering for the people there. Like they gave everyone who was there free water and Doritos.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with free.
And what they would do if you were cheering really loudly, they'd move you to better seats. So these guys who I was speaking about, so Joaquin and Frank, they from Watch Great Wrestling, they said they were like they would really get into it and like really cheering and booing, and so then they get moved to better seats. So it was like that incentive. But then they also noticed when they watched things back that their shots would get put into matches that they weren't there for when they were taped.
That's incredible.
Yes. I love that. It's like it's a real TV thing, like it's, they've got these shots. Why not stick them in if they're good shots?
Right.
They did say later on they got kicked out because Lucha Underground started selling tickets, and so they kicked out the freeloaders when the actual ticket holders got people who are actually paying to be there turned up. So it's interesting that that's the way that it was done. But you're right that it had like a really specific atmosphere to it. The lighting was a very specific set of lighting. Even the ring apron was like the ring. It was the color you'd normally expect, like that sort of bluey gray that you get, but then it was speckled with red, and then it had the Aztec logo in the middle.
Yeah, and it creates like this brown overlay in the ring, like and it's covered in glass and blood and whatever else.
Yeah, by the end of this match, it sure is. Going back to the characters, though, so I, watching this, you actually sent it through to me, but on a podcast appearance that Swerve did on the No Contest Wrestler podcast, he said that specifically he and Fox made a point of trying to steer away from stereotypes that are normally associated with black wrestlers when they constructed the characters for this feud. Like, there's none of the flashiness, none of that hip hop influence that is so present when a lot of black characters are put on TV in wrestling. It's like two soldiers. And that is like a very real thing, because I know that in the American military, African-American people are overrepresented in that military and are people who have served over the years. So it's a real experience
from the beginning of the country, Sam.
Exactly.
As far as like people, like there's a complex history with black people in the military, just like anything in America, and people being proud of the flag when the flag don't necessarily. It's like you're proud of the ideals of the flag and you want to hold the ideals of the flag up, even if America doesn't always cooperate. And I think them being like, there's a lot of military guys in wrestling, right? And for them to kind of, and Swerve was actually
Swerve being one of them.
Yeah, Swerve's one of them. And I believe he was in the Army Reserves, if I'm not mistaken. But if you beef it up for the Marines, it is wrestling. So I think having that is also to say, like, to show their humanity as black men, and then humanity in the world of Lucha Underground. Like, these were humans. Like, these weren't demons. These weren't dragons. These weren't like any of these people. Like, their whole thing was like, they can feel pain. They can feel weakness. And then like to basically have this mirror kind of show up where with a similar past, like it could end no other way than in the Hell of War environment.
And that Hell of War, of course, first blood is the first fall, second fall is no DQ, and medical evac. So it's the old 3 stages of hell, but with Lucha Underground putting their own spin on it, and particularly the medical evac is to do with it's like a military spin on the ambulance match. So they're they're being very creative with how they present this.
Yeah, and one more thing about them being two black wrestlers doing this style of like death match, like is just not rarely seen. I'm not saying that like people don't do it, and there aren't guys like like people like New Jack laid the foundation for stuff like this, and even going further back, they've had these street fights, just like used to call the ghetto street fight, like Junkyard Dog used to have stuff like that, but like this wasn't necessarily Abdullah the Butcher, as you mentioned, like, but as far as like two of them, like in this modern day, I think it's not just about all the weapons that they use the blood, they use the athleticism that I think really draws the modern fan into it. And then like, as you mentioned, like all the story stuff ties it together on another element. But I think this also caught two guys at a very unique point in their career where they were just trying to be legendary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trying to, particularly, I guess, for Swerve, what he would be in the earlier years of his career, really trying to make a name for himself. And AR Fox at this point, Dante Fox, is someone who the diehards know about, but is not someone who is even on the level of like the national indie darlings. He's been in PWG and whatnot, but he's not that top tier of indie darlings, and he's probably trying to get there.
Yeah, like AR Fox was, kind of in all those same circles of Evolve, and Swerve later kind of followed in his footsteps. And these guys, I would call them very overlooked, and they maybe it was a good thing, like as far as like them being overlooked, because it drove them to tap into their creativity, tap into their violent side, and then tap into like, hey man, we're gonna show everybody, y'all might not be looking at us right now, but we're gonna stand the test of time with this thing, and we're gonna basically close the gap on whoever the people are that may have been ahead of them at that particular time.
Well, look, let's get into the match. We've sort of built it up what they are. Let's get into the blood and guts of it. As we always do here on the AEW Match Guide, let's give the match its flowers. The Wrestling Observer newsletter never ranked this match.
Incredible.
Has not been rated by them, but Cage Match certainly has. It currently sits at 9.57. That's Swerve's third highest match as of today. AR Fox's highest rated match ever, and it's the highest rated match from the whole of Lucha Underground's run, which is a number of very high profile wrestlers going in there. So that is a match that is critically very, very well loved.
Right.
The ring announcers, we'll go into the temple. There's a mariachi band actually leads the whole thing off, which is pretty awesome. Leads off the broadcast. But when they get to this match, the ring announcer announces that the first fall will be First Blood, and then gives a little bit of a laugh. Rich, I think this lady's getting a bit excited about the thought of blood coming in from these two men. And why she should be as well. Killshot, he's first out. Fox is out second. Matt Striker on the commentary desk screams, one of them is going to bleed. And the ref, by the way, of course, Rick Knox. Of course,
referee Rick Knox.
These guys, they charge at each other. And within a minute, they're already falling onto the outside. They're brawling, and it's just clearly going to be a brutal match. But even so, particularly in these early stages, they're leaning a lot into their agility. They're dodging moves. They're dodging weapon shots. I like how that agility and not getting hit early on, it sort of ramps up that anticipation of violence.
Yeah, and then there's the fact that they say it's a First Blood match. They point out, well, this one of these guys is wearing a mask. How are you going to tell? And then they find their way around that eventually. But yeah, as you mentioned, like this thing opens with the explosive athleticism that I think really these guys had in spades, especially at that point. AR Fox is like, even to this day with AR Fox, he keeps himself in such top condition to where he's able to just get up and down in a ridiculously athletic way. Swerve is kind of taking his training and his body a different way, so he's not the springy guy that he once was. He's kind of replaced that with power and presence. But here we're looking at guys that are maybe like 180, 190 pounds that are pretty much physical freaks in nature, that are going back and forth and have intense chemistry with each other, and just know exactly where the other one's going to be.
And that dodging and like violently swinging weapons, so like wildly swinging weapons and dodging them early, that's a trick that Mick Foley likes to do in his matches. I've watched a number of his like commentaries where he's like gone back and looked at matches that he's done, and he's talked a number of times early on. He loves to just like get that baseball bat and just swing it as hard as he can and trust that the opponent's going to dodge it as a way to sort of like up the anticipation of like, oh, when is this going to connect? And because he's going so hard at it, like when it's going to connect, that's going to hit. And they specifically do that where there's this moment, which I thought was kind of unique. I'd never seen it before. They put like a ladder on between the ring apron and the barriers on the side. And Fox like pops his head up between the struts of the ladder. And it's almost like whack-a-mole, like Killshot like brings it down like whack-a-mole, but he uses that to like bait him in and then push the ladder at him and knock him off, which I thought was pretty cool. And yeah, you mentioned it was interesting that the thing with the mask, and the commentators call that out. It's like Rick Knox is going to have to check under the mask to see if Killshot is bleeding. So I don't think we mentioned early up, Killshot is wearing like a black mask with a target on it, but because it's First Blood, they're going to have to be checking under it. And Fox actually does a number of times. He like attacks with trying to punch the top of Killshot's head to bring out that blood, which is like an interesting bit of psychology for this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's it all kind of culminates with the huge the first glass spot to where it's all set up. And again, this is 2015. This is not, there is one major league ball game in town that people are watching on television. New Japan's not doing glass.
No.
Now, if you're watching Big Japan or something like that, not really talking about that. I don't even think that GCW is up and running at this point. But you see Swerve flip through that glass, and then they've dropped you so far into this world now. Like Lucha Underground's its own world, but this match creates its own world of danger, of violence, and then you see it, and then Swerve has scars in his back to this day that he did not enter that match with from that particular first spot with all that glass.
Yeah, and even just the build up to that, like Fox really dominates this first fall. Like he gets Killshot with like chair shots. He sandwiches Killshot between two chairs on the apron, and then launches himself from the other side from the barriers across to it. He pulls out that plank glass, but even amongst all of this violence and the weapons, they still pull out like this crazy midair Spanish fly off the top rope. They sort of like jump at each other and then turn it into a Spanish fly once they connect, which is like, that blend of like there's violence, there's athleticism, and it's like something that only these two guys really are doing. In Lucha Underground, you've got guys like Penta, who, of course, Penta does move about a bit, but he is a little bit more powerful, and he's using the violence. And then you've got guys like Puma and Phoenix, who are, very, very athletic. But these two are they're the combination of the two.
They're the hybrid,
yeah. And when you get that glass into the ring, Fox just, he's just overpowering Killshot at this moment, and they get on that top turnbuckle, and Fox literally like throws Swerve over the top of Killshot over the top of his head, flips him over and through that pane of glass. Rich, I've seen, like First Blood matches in the past where, they get like an itty bitty scratch on their forehead. And it's like, oh, ding, little scratch, little couple trickles of blood, ding, 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 match is over. But like, as you said, Killshot, he goes through this pane of glass, and there is glass everywhere, and there is blood all over his back. He is an absolute mess.
Yeah, you couldn't hide that if he tried.
Yeah. It doesn't matter about the mask. No, he didn't need to worry about the mask. It was just there. And yeah, like it's worth noting, Fox just dominated that first fall. And as we move into the second fall, they announced that it's going to be no DQ. Killshot, even as they ring the bell, he looks in agony. He's got blood dripping down his arms. There's just the pain on his face. And Fox just immediately gets like two super close near falls. Looks so overpowering in that moment until like Killshot, he finally rallies. He gets some offense. He hits like some running kicks and then the kill stomp. But Fox kicks out at 1, and the crowd's into it. Everyone's standing. But when Fox kicks out at 1, even after Killshot finally gets some offense, the crowd just explodes. And the emotion on Fox's face when he does that makes that kick out at 1 feel so right. Like a long time ago, you and I, we covered the Revolution tag match, which has that famous Omega kick out from the Bucks doing the golden trigger to him.
Yep.
And I feel like the way that Dante Fox emotes and the anger and emotion on his face when he kicks out at 1 at this point it's up there with Kenny Omega, like punching the ring then.
Yeah. I think the fact that Dante Fox is an unmasked guy in Lucha Underground kind of made him different. And then like the Swerve or Killshot wearing the mask, and then in juxtaposition to, Dante Fox for me, like you just see him being conflicted all throughout the match, and then him being intense, and you can read just every piece of his face, and it's like if you just watch the match and just look at his face the entire time, just off of his reaction to everything, I think that's almost another way you can experience the match.
I've got to call out Vampiro and Matt Strickl, who are on commentary.
Gosh.
They nail it throughout this match, and particularly in this moment, Vampiro, he sums it up so perfectly. He goes, "This is adrenaline and hatred. This is I am not going to give in to you, motherfucker, ever." So he like has to pull himself up from dropping the F-bomb on live TV because he's so caught up in it. But it just sums it up so perfectly. Yeah, and immediately after that, you get the stomp, you get the kick out at 1, but Killshot is able to hit like a knee strike and then powerbomb Fox through this barbed wire board that he's brought in and propped up against the corner ring. And the crowd is just like they're on another level. Matt Strickers yells out, "This is hell!" And even Rick Knox has got his hand over his face, and Killshot's then able to pick up Fox and get the 3 count with a JML driver onto the glass, which is still all over the ring.
Yeah,
I love the way they pace this and work this out. It's like everything is Dante Fox until Killshot gets he gets 1 in, and then he's able to take it and just grab hold of it by this, and claw his way back in and make that a rally and make that a decisive fall, and he gets back into the 2 out of 3 falls match.
Bro, it's so the YouTube video that exists of this is a 27-minute video. This match goes by so fast.
Oh, ridiculous.
It goes by so fast, and what they do to get from like spot to spot and to build it up. A lot of times 2 out of 3 falls matches feel like, the first fall or the second fall kind of ends unrealistically, or whatever. But what they did was they almost have like actually 3 matches in one. It's like, it actually feels like it's on even terms here, and somebody just got caught slipping early. Like you didn't have to worry about rolling somebody up in the first fall. You didn't have to worry about any of that because they were like, all right, we basically build to this climatic fall in the first fall, no pun intended. And then, we basically get to, the hardcore match with with your referee counts in the second one. And then the third fall, we'll talk about in a second.
You know what other 2 out of 3 falls follows this nearly exact same template? Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada. It is nearly the same template in terms of how it's like competitive early on. Then Okada just manages to dominate. He gets that first fall, and he is so cocky. And Omega is so demoralized from losing that first fall because he's never he's barely been able to beat Okada, and now he's got to get him twice. Yeah, and he's so demoralized from it that Okada just looks unstoppable at the start of that second fall, but Omega is able to like claw his way back in and then get to a decisive point and turn that into turning the game around for himself. But that's potentially the greatest 2 out of 3 falls match ever, potentially the greatest match ever. Who knows? If you ask Dave Meltzer, it is. And we're comparing these two. I think that, it's half the runtime, and I would probably say like it's a fair comparison. And like
to think like, this match was happening like almost in like it was on TV and all that, right?
Mm.
But this was like this was pseudo obscurity because Lucha Underground was like I don't even know how we're gonna explain Lucha Underground like 25 years from now. We're like, yo, so there was this show, right? And then it looked like nothing else in pro wrestling at the time, before or since. And they shot it like this cinematic thing they had intergender wrestling, they had movie like villains and characters, and then it was lucha libre based, but they also had like the US independent scene and a bunch of terrible contracts locked up with some of these people, but we'll not mention that part. But this one right here, like this, I think you stand this in and you can easily see why both of these guys kind of like went forward in their career, like with elevated profiles. And then in Swerve's case, he was able to tap into what he laid the foundation of in this match later on in his career. And he's I would say like a hardcore legend at this point.
Absolutely.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Well, let's finish the match and we'll talk about sort of the legacy, I guess, because you're right. You're absolutely right. But let's get to the third fall. We'll move through that. Yeah, because at this point, both men have done massive things through barbed wire. They're on the glass, and now one of them's got to get stretched out in the medical evac. Both men are bleeding everywhere. There's barbed wire. There's glass everywhere. And yeah, as I said, it's like fittingly military themed. And earlier on, there's even two. You don't know if they're actual Marines or just actors, extras that they've got to dress up as Marines, but they've at least brought them through to to bring the evac there. And they just both start swinging punches as the bell rings, and they suplex over the top to the outside. You get like this really cool shotgun drop kick that Killshot does over the top of the gurney. All
the gurney spots are excellent.
Yeah. And then there's just this really cool moment where Dante is crawling away and Killshot is just dragging the gurney around the ring. Very cool visual. Killshot's body language is just so strong as he's kind of walking through there. And you can see how he wants this to be over, but he's still resolute in what he's going to do. And then he just like slams Dante onto the gurney it's like almost an air raid crash slam onto the gurney, which breaks the gurney and starts to smash the gurney up, but also leaves like a piece of blood from Killshot on there. One of the commentators calls it like a thing of flesh. Like these two create like some seriously memorable images in this fall, even excluding the final bit of it, like these images with like the flesh and him crawling away. It's just like such striking images.
Yeah, man. That flesh shot is like really kind of disgusting in its own sense.
Unsettling.
Yeah, like, and it's just like, is that actually flesh? You don't really know, but it's like it looks like something. So at that point, it's plausible enough. You can see like Melissa Santos, like, they're swinging the camera around, and she's got her hand over her mouth, like just in disbelief at what she's seeing. And the gurney spots, like, this is almost like, how the effect breaking tables has on people, like so like tables are one thing, but a gurney, like there's nowhere for you to really go if somebody lands on you. You just kind of have to feel that. And this match, like, you could see their physical wounds or whatever on them that they had to feel. But I think this was like another level of it because
Mm,
like there's nothing to break the fall except the gurney. Like
mm,
that stuff is like, this is the forward thinking stuff that
mm.
I don't know if these guys have ever properly gotten credit for, but like I can't even think of anyone that's like thought to even steal this stuff.
Mm. I feel like creating those sorts of striking visual images is something that Swerve really thinks about doing a lot in his matches. You would probably know better than me, but it just seems like that is something that's always at the forefront of his mind of like, how can I turn this into some like just a visual image that people will remember and people will connect with. As I said, like he's pulling this gurney behind him as Fox like is on his knees crawling away from him. The gurney is like busted at one point where it's like, it's angled down at one bit, and there's the, as you said, the flesh on it. And I just think about other matches that he's had as well where, there's just these images of things in it. And I feel like that's something that is at the forefront of his mind when he is wrestling. And
Yeah,
it's very
like
effective.
because like it's not all about the moves. Like, and
Mm.
you can do the moves, and he damn sure like mastered that art of it. But like there's another part of performing that he just like intrinsically understands. Like as far as like leaving lasting memories, like you can take it up to the Hangman thing, and like and tying it into like a storyline sense, like when he steals the artwork, and then you bring the artwork into the match with the staple gun,
Mm.
and then that's just like connecting the dots. That's incredible.
Yeah. As I said, they sort of continue to destroy the medical gurney. They as well as doing that air raid crash. Swerve does a stomp to Fox on it, and as they sort of move around the ring, the camera starts to focus on this contraption that's there. It looks like it's like a giant pane of glass that's underneath that's bordered by some wood, and
Bro,
it's
I
sitting
don't know
about.
who
I don't know.
set that up. I don't know who set it up. It was
Well,
just there.
the commentators say it's the general manager Dario Cueto. He commissioned it specifically for this match, saying that he, the general manager, wants them to go through hell. I love that Dario Cueto is just like such a sadist within the
Yeah.
canon of Lucha Underground, and they sort of explain why it's there.
As different as Lucha Underground purport itself to be, at the end of the day is run by the low down, dirty, no good promoter.
Yeah. That's just wrestling. You can't escape it. Yeah, look, they move to the final moments. They fight up to the band stage, which is, as I said, is about probably 10, 12 feet above that plane of glass. And the crowd start chanting, "Please don't die." They sort of fight, and Fox gets Killshot on his knees. He's like choking him with a mic cord and telling him how he's better than Killshot, and how what he did to Killshot was wrong. Killshot did to him was wrong. But then Killshot grabs a glass bottle, and it kind of is weirdly edited in. I think they may have edited that bit in afterwards, just like a hand grabbing it. It might not even be Killshot's hand. But anyway, Killshot grabs a glass bottle, a bottle of alcohol, and smashes it over Fox's head. And then Fox takes an absolutely insane bump through those. It's like two panes of glasses. So it's about 12 feet above. 2 panes of glasses smashing through the floor. There's like glass tables just everywhere. He is absolutely not getting up. Killshot carries him to the back in that and puts him in the medivac truck. He wins the match, but he doesn't look happy about it at the end. Rich, this ending, man, like the number one, the bump is ridiculous. It is an all-time ridiculous spot in wrestling, up there with like Tommy Dreamer going through 4 tables or whatever you want to put up against it. Like it is an all-timer spot in wrestling. But then also just the way Killshot sort of puts him up on his shoulders and carries him to the back, and it's like, this is what I should have done when I had my time. If I had my time back, this is what I would have done in war. I would have put my brother on my back, and I'm going to put him in the medivac because I want him to get better. And he wins the match. But yeah, look, he's he's got mixed feelings about it, to say the least.
Yeah, it's like when you go a little bit too far and the entire crowd is stunned when Fox is like basically laying down dead and then Killshot is walking up to him. The crowd, it just looks like they're not sure if something went wrong. They're not sure, like, did this guy just die in front of us? And as you mentioned, that piece of storytelling, like, he like Fox still has all this glass all over him, still put him on his back or whatever. So it's like these guys have. It's almost like they're carrying each other, or Killshot's carrying them to the finish line of this great piece of art. Like, and they, got there together. Essentially, he takes this one kind of look back at the audience, like, "Wow, I can't believe we've gone to this level with each other." And then he closes, the medevac van, and then he's just like kind of bent over in front of it in disbelief, almost like. And even though the guy's wearing a mask, you can see the emotion on his face. And he's like, "You know what? Go ahead, take him." And then they drive it off. They raise his hand, and he's just like at this point, like, the crowd is just like, "I can't believe what we just saw," and they just erupt at that point. And the guy walks away from it, and he's just like, he just looks at the environment, and you think, like, this is what I was willing to do for the story. This is what I was willing to do for just me as a wrestler in a meta sense now. And then just wanting the crown, wanting to be recognized, wanting to go down in history. And I think, by that point, he knows it. Like, they probably know it. Obviously we don't have a camera inside the medevac van, but I imagine Fox felt the same thing.
Yeah, I love that he's not like, running to the corner and pumping the air, because he's like, "No, this is my brother." And there's like, even though the crowd is really like wanting to applaud him, he's still staying in that moment and staying in that story. And it sort of really pays off again. Like, the commentators do a really good job again of like helping nudge the audience into thinking, like, this is what Killshot is thinking, like, this is what Killshot is feeling, and everything sort of coming together to create that story of, it's like Killshot's remembering the brotherhood that he had with this person, and then that's sort of paid off again, where this is on, so the Ultimate Lucha Tres, Ultimate Lucha's the season finale for Lucha Underground. So, they shot things as a season because it's a TV show. They shot things as a season, and they would have, multiple nights of this Ultimate Lucha. And later on in the Ultimate Lucha, so I think week 2 or week 3, these guys have a trios title match, and they're in the team together because they've fought, they've fought, and they've got past the animosity, they've got past what they had, and now all that's left is the brotherhood. And they immediately win the trios title because, like, if these guys are willing to do this to each other, then how can anything stand in their face if they're united against something else?
Right.
Yep. And that win it's like a fantastic way to sort of cap off the story of these two brothers. They go through what they went through in this match, and then they just have their brotherhood remaining.
Yeah, man. Like, it's one for the ages if you guys have never watched it. So, like, highest recommend on my end.
100%. Couldn't say it more. Let's move on to the legacy of this match. Let's move on to sort of what's happened afterwards since. And I think now's a really good time to dive into it. We actually got some direct quotes from the man himself, Swerve Strickland. Really pleased we could get this. Is the second time this season that we've managed to get the wrestlers in these matches to sort of jump in and give us some thoughts. So I'm just going to read what Swerve said word for word, and then we'll reflect on some of the things that he brought up. So he says, "I actually took stuff from the Marty the Moth death match I did and applied it here and amplified it because Fox could do more. Setting out to steal the whole Ultimate Lucha weekend. We put it together the night before. We had the crew order every piece of equipment. I always like making the villain more powerful than the hero and putting the hero in turmoil that it seems like he cannot come back from. and the hero barely winning the fight, or at least some type of fluke. So there's a fair bit in there. But firstly, I want to know where the crew gets these orders from. Like, where do you go to get like just like a giant pane of glass or a barbed wire board? Like, where do you go? What props department has that?
Yeah, the big wrestler depot, man. It's a big factory. You put your order in and say, hey, I got a dangerous opponent, and I want to really do it to him this match. And they say, okay, we'll put a custom order for you together.
Yeah. So two main things I want to pull out of this. Obviously he said setting out to steal the whole Ultimate Lucha weekend. In that interview that he did on the No Contest Wrestling podcast, he specifically called out the match from last year's season finale with Prince Puma, who Ricochet versus Phoenix, and what those guys did together, and being like, we have to one up that, and we have to steal this weekend. And absolutely did. But, it's cool that, he's got that vision, and he's like, we're going to do something different, because obviously Puma and Ricochet and Ray Phoenix, as much as I love Swerve and Fox, I feel like they're just like, they're a hair's breadth behind those two. So they're like, what can we do that's slightly different? And this is it. And well and truly did go and steal it.
And just different was one of Swerve's like taglines at one point in his career. Like, he wasn't necessarily trying to be better or worse than anybody. It was like trying to be different than anybody.
Yep, absolutely. But the big thing that I got when I saw this from Swerve was what he said about how he likes to make the villain more powerful than the hero. And you can see that in how Fox just dominates early on in this. And the thing that it immediately reminded me of, Rich, is it immediately reminded me of probably the biggest match that Swerve's ever had. Well, definitely the biggest match that Swerve's ever had. Him putting this philosophy in place when he faced Bryan Danielson at Wembley, and how overwhelmingly powerful he comes across, so that when Danielson rallies and gets his, has that moment where he's like screaming out to his daughter how much he loves her, and how he's being so filled with motivation and adrenaline by thinking through his love for his family. For that to be so powerful, it has to be against something that like normally he just cannot overcome. And in that match, Swerve is immense in the way that he projects himself.
Yeah, and for him to like he wrestled how he looks now. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, as far as like how like, I'll never forget the no selling of the Busaiku knee, him rushing it off, cackling like a movie villain, basically like, you got to do better than that. And then like, it's really incredible.
Even the entrance, the where he's got, and the gear that he's got with the heads on spikes, I loved. Or I'm even thinking back to the promo they do the night before, not the night before, the Dynamite before in Cardiff, where he's telling Danielson that, like, if Danielson ever wrestles again, Swerve is going to come down and find him and beat him up. Like, and like this guy who's like just so confident in himself and just so full of venom that he's like, I don't care if you put a mask on and go and wrestle in Mexico, I'm going to find out and you're going to have hell to pay. And then, yeah, as you said, like in that match, the Busaiku knee that's the zenith of it. Danielson runs into him and Swerve just eats it like it's nothing. And it's cool to see how, like, this is a philosophy that Swerve obviously has. It's like, this is how I put together the matches. Like, this is something I want to do to put together these matches. And it's something that, is clearly very effective, because that, this match, obviously we've been singing its praises, but that Danielson match, like, that may well be my favorite match ever. And when you're looking at cage match, I said this is like Swerve's third best match of all time. Well, one of the two that's ahead of it is that Danielson match. So yeah, it's cool that he's kind of outlined that philosophy, and it's something that he's obviously thought through a lot in his, in constructing wrestling matches over the years.
Yeah, man. It's really cool to see kind of like just thinking about it, like he kind of had a long, hard road up and kind of like went a lot of places that I don't know if people necessarily saw for him. And just personally, like I've had many conversations about wrestling and Swerve and his own career with Swerve. I've been fortunate enough to for him to kind of let me in like that. And I always kind of looked at him and I compared him to a lot of people that were of his era and generation. I was like, there's nothing that like they don't have or that you don't have that they do. Like all you need is pretty much the opportunity and just to keep showing up every day. And like the second that he got an opportunity, he went crazy, and he was almost like I think you brought him up earlier. There's comparisons I think to Kenny Omega in that sense, to where like there's this throughout your 20s you're not necessarily this sought after person. You're working in lower level promotions and like lower profile places, but there's clearly talent there. But all it takes is the right opening for someone, and then like you're going to explode into your 30s, and then just explode with generational wrestling. And I think if you look at it in the 2010s, it was Kenny. And if you look in the 2020s, I feel like Swerve fits that decade's version of that. And, I'm so impressed just from being a fan and being a friend as well. And thinking about, like this match that like, this is almost like there's an artist, right? I'm a rapper and stuff like that. So I'm always going to kind of compare it to music. It was like, he's put out a bunch of these classic albums, like essentially with all these, matches with Danielson, with Hangman, with Kenny, with whoever, with Ricochet on AEW. Though like those are his official mainstream release albums. But this right here, this is the mixtape. This is the classic mixtape that everybody knows about. That if you never really seen before, you have to see. And it kind of just tells you what the guy's capable of. Is just eventually he got that look, and it makes me wonder, and it makes me curious about other wrestlers who may be sitting around who just need that chance. And in AR Fox's case, I think, he was a couple years ahead of Swerve, and like I think he may have paid the price for being a trailblazer a little bit, and just moves wise in the ring, he's incredible. And I don't know if he necessarily tapped into the other side of wrestling as well as Swerve did from this point. That's no knock on him. It's just how it shook out. And I was really excited to see these guys link up together in AEW, but of course it wasn't meant to be. They did have, some matches in AEW, which were kind of a nod and wink to what went on. But everybody that knows about this match, like this is like one of the real special matches I think there's ever been. And if AR Fox does nothing else in his career, if he retires tomorrow, he'll always have this one. And then for Swerve, like for one guy, it was almost like the thing they're known for. And then the other guy, it was like a launch point.
On Swerve, you kind of, you outlined it there, but like he made himself undeniable. One thing I always remember that you said when AEW first started, and we're talking about Sean Spears of all people, you were like, let's see what he's got. And you said you never know who's going to be Stone Cold. Because, when Stone Cold joins the WWE, no one knows that that's going to be what he's going to be. He's not that. He's someone who is like technically well respected, but he goes in, he's the ringmaster. And when early AEW was coming up, it's like, but to go back to Stone Cold, he just hadn't had the right spot and he hadn't had the right presentation. And when he got it, it was on fire. Like it was undeniable. It was on fire. And obviously that wasn't Sean Spears. But as you said, like you never know who it's going to be. And it was Swerve. People coming across, I don't think anyone thought, oh, this guy is going to be the man. Like this is going to be the guy of, who comes across and is the guy. Because at that stage, there was so many people coming across from WWE. It was Adam Cole, Malachi Black, Andrade. This is within the 12 months of Swerve coming through. Hell, like Keith Lee, who Swerve tagged with. All of those people you would kind of have put in front of Swerve in terms of like these are the pecking order of who you'd think might blow up. But because Swerve, when he got that presentation, when he had that chance, even just in that tag team with Keith Lee, to get that spotlight on him, he shone so brightly. Like I remember seeing him in that Acclaimed in the series with the Acclaimed, and how he just dominated and put those guys over so well, and was able to read the room so well in those moments, and managed to help make those guys one of the most popular acts at the time in AEW, because he was wrestling so well. And then by the time, he was having those matches with Hangman, it was like, if this guy doesn't get made AEW champion, it's going to be booking malpractice. Like, it will be an all-time case of booking malpractice if this guy isn't crowned. And he came in as not a favored child, as not someone who people thought would be the guy, but he got the look, and he got his foot in the door, and he, as you said, he went crazy, and he made himself completely undeniable. And yeah, like, I think a big part of that, you can see the building blocks of it in this match here. Like, you can see the body language, the presence, you can see the creativity. And I think another key thing, like, you can see how he just knows how to use violence so effectively to, like, stand out and be different. And like, he just understands the psychology and pacing of a violent match, which is so evident in this, and then was evident in his rise. Particularly, you look at the matches with Hangman, how, like, legendary that Texas death match is, and then the second match they had at All Out, the cage match, like the pacing of that, the violence, and of course he was in with another sicko who really gets it as well, in Hangman, but you can see the building blocks of what made Swerve so great in this 2 out of 3 falls match.
Yeah, because the wrestling's there, and then the ability for to translate violence in a way that is thoughtful and is not violence for the sake of violence. And it is also like I remember the Texas death match, the first one. I was like, I don't think I've ever watched a match and knew I was going 5 stars on it faster than that one. Like, just the way, like, they exploded into the combat, you could kind of see it was different, man. And like, it all kind of traces back to this match here. Like, it gets going off the rip in this match, and then it never really lets up.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned AR Fox as well, trailblazer, and yeah, it didn't pan out the same way as it did with Swerve with AR Fox. It's fair to say it's been up and down ride in AEW, but man, I just have to call out the time he was with the Mogul Embassies. Him and Swerve together looked so dangerous. Like, that invasion of the Buddy Wayne Academy, and where they left Nick Wayne like bleeding in a puddle in his dad's ring, is just absolute all-time levels of threat.
Yeah, man. I don't think I will ever forget this match. And it is as I said, if you've never seen this match and you feel like and you're a huge fan of either AR Fox or Swerve, and you want to see them kind of at, some of their athletic, like, tapping into their athletic zeniths, and just getting a chance to be hungry and young, and wanting to make an impact on the world, that you're in. Maybe you feel like you've been overlooked. Maybe you feel like there's a lot of guys that get the credit that you feel like you could have gotten. You just haven't been exposed or had the right connections at a certain point. And they just decided to turn Lucha Underground into their own platform. I think people will forget about Lucha Underground at a certain point, right? But some of the guys in the matches, I think, will stand the test of time.
Let's talk Lucha Underground a little bit, because I think I'm happy to close the book on Swerve and Fox for now. And we've said all we can about that match, but let's just reflect as a last thing. Let's just reflect a bit on Lucha Underground, because I think it's interesting to look at Lucha Underground in light of AEW now, like, just dominating and assuming that position as the second biggest wrestling promotion, sort of by default alternative to the WWE, because in the 2010s it wasn't as clear cut. Particularly the late 2010s, like TNA sort of had, after Bischoff and Hogan were done with it, it really receded into the background, and it was still there. It's the cockroach that will never die, for God's sake. But it definitely was at a very low ebb at this point. Of course, you've got New Japan internationally, which is doing its own thing and blowing up in its own way. ROH, of course, off the back of the Elite and the Bullet Club involvement, is sort of in that position as second biggest. But Lucha Underground, as you said, like it's on a premium cable channel on El Rey Network, and they've got like a number of different things. And it's interesting that in that position, they really went with a presentation that no other wrestling promotion really before or after has done. There's kind of Shikara kind of did it, which is a promotion I talked about a number of episodes ago with my friend Ms. Fan, who is also an unabashed fan of Lucha Underground. But it's a promotion that has its own sort of lore to it. It's got like this historic backstory to do with the Aztec gods. It's not a reality-based promotion, which I think is key, which is the way that, of course, WWE, AEW, TNA, ROH, all of these are like reality. They're based in reality, whereas Lucha Underground is not based in that. It has its own lore. It has these backstage scenes that were like canonical events that take place, but they're not like they're not broadcast on TV in the way that backstage segments are broadcast in WWE and AEW in what most Western professional wrestling. The other characters can't just flick on a TV and watch it. It's the same way a TV show scenes work. And that allowed them to do some really creative angles and some really interesting creative stuff. But it was also done, like all of this was done with like complete sincerity by the performers. Something like Broken Matt Hardy has had those elements to it, but it's all done with a wink and a nod, whereas this is done with complete authenticity. Like AR Fox and Swerve Strickland are not AR Fox and Swerve Strickland. They are Killshot and Dante Fox, and they have these backstories which are committed to with complete totality. And it's so admirable creatively. But I don't know if it would ever work on a scale of AEW. And it is a vision as well that, like, I don't know if Tony Khan, I'm sure he's seen some of these matches. He's a wrestling nerd at heart, so I'm sure he's seen a whole bunch of it. But it is a vision as well that he completely rejected when it came time for him to put his own wrestling promotion together. Yeah, so I'm like very conflicted with how I feel about Lucha Underground, because I love the creativity, and I really love the sincerity of it as well, and the commitment of the performers to like just go all in on this fantastical vision for pro wrestling. But yeah, I'm not sure how it could have scaled potentially if indeed they wanted it to scale to be sort of the level of an AEW.
Nah, like I think kind of a product for his time. There wasn't like, I don't think, top end finances to do such a thing, and I think it was always marketed as a TV show rather than like, because they weren't going to tour, they weren't going to go international. It seemed like they caught the lightning in a bottle of WWE basically ignoring an entire section of wrestlers and styles of guys, and really kind of being out of touch, and leading to, and you could see later in the 2010s, as NXT starts getting stronger, as AEW eventually launches, Lucha Underground gets weaker and weaker because their talent base dries up, and they sign people to a bunch of terrible contracts and some other things. And then it just I don't think it was ever really sustainable. But for that time, like, it will be, as you mentioned, it's like a television show. I don't want to necessarily compare it to Glow, like as far as like, because Glow was, I mean, there are characters in Glow that were just tied to that world, and it was seasonally based. Like there are some comparisons there, but obviously the wrestling element is way different. But they were always going to kind of struggle to replace whenever these guys, quote unquote, get too big for Lucha Underground. Like, having replacements was always going to be a struggle. But as you mentioned, the commitment to the spirit of it and the bit, I asked for almost nothing more in wrestling, but to take itself seriously and like believe its own, like your own world building, your own history, and be like, yo, this is who we are. in Lucha Underground, if nothing else, they were unabashedly them.
That's an interesting thought to be like, that commitment is something that all wrestling has to have for it to be great. Like, you have to believe in the stakes of, and even in a reality-based promotion like AEW, for instance, like, you have to believe in the stakes that the AEW championship means something. And that these characters and these wrestlers, even though they're not what the characters in Lucha Underground were, you have to believe that the sincerity of their performances comes through. And when that rug is pulled out and other things become the focus, or the focus isn't in on what is being promoted and what is being shown in the ring, then the fan interest eventually just falls apart, because the show's creative vision can't hold up anymore because the stakes have been taken out of it.
Right.
Well, look, Rich, we've gone through quite a bit. We've gone through Hell of War. We've gone through the legacy of Swerve and Fox. And look, I of course, the people who are listening, they know that we got those Swerve quotes through you. So I really have to appreciate that, and do pass on my thanks to Swerve. It's not something that I take lightly, that these wrestlers do trust us with their thoughts and their words. And I really appreciate it when they do that, when they are happy to do that.
Same here. Like, look, just a bunch of things I'm fortunate to, I happen to be a part of, and I happen to be trusted with. Like, that's really cool that we could reference some of the feelings directly from somebody.
As I said, like, it doesn't come about if we're not taking it seriously ourselves, and if the guests aren't coming with the research and with the notes done. So yeah, look, really appreciate that. And look, thanks for joining me. Going through this match has been a blast, and chatting with you. I always love chatting wrestling with you. So let the good folks know where they can find you.
You can listen to One Nation Radio on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Follow me, Rich Latta 32 on Twitter. You can type in Rich Latta Pro Wrestling on YouTube for more kind of extended thoughts on a lot of different things. Got a lot of cool stuff coming to the channel. You can type me in Spotify if you enjoy music, and I got some music coming out there. Have a new album dropping relatively soon. I just kind of have to finalize it. But yeah, appreciate you having me on, Sam.
You're a hard worker. You're a busy man, Rich Latta. You're a busy man.
Try to. One lifetime, man.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening in as well. Really appreciate it. If you have enjoyed what you've listened to today, please rate us or review us in your podcast app of choice. Give us the big 5 stars. We really appreciate it if you do, or the like, or whatever it is that you can do in your podcast app to say that you enjoyed what you listened to. And you can also support the podcasts or the entire network, indeed, financially on Red Circle. And also reach out in the Discord. Let us know. We'll be talking about this match. Let us know what you think of this match. If you've never seen it, I'll be dropping a link to the match in the Discord as well, so that you can come and you can watch it and you can experience what is like an all-timer of a match. And as I said, like, it's about half an hour or so, but it will fly by. It'll be over before you know it. It's a really fun watch. So jump into the Social Suplex Discord and watch that if you haven't, or otherwise let me know your thoughts on it, or your thoughts on what Swerve said. I thought it was interesting, the thoughts that he gave as well. So if you want to find me as well, you can also email me. My email is in the podcast description, or just reach out to me through the Discord. But we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We'll be back in looking at further. We're going to be going back to WCW and looking at some old school WCW with Andy from the Group Chat Wrestling Podcast. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. Thank you again for joining me, Rich, and thank you for the listeners for listening to me. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye. Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide Podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.